The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about. Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. My guest today is Republican strategist Mike Lane. Mike, welcome again.
Thank you, Mark.
It's always good to have you here. And, of course, you can participate as well. All you have to do is pick up the phone and dial 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, and you can join in the conversation. Well, Mike, it seems to me that you and I and probably most of the establishment press had already declared Mitt Romney the victor after Florida, and maybe it was premature. It seems to me that it's funny because you and I think, are as much at fault as the mainstream media. They sort of had written off Rick Santorum. And my colleagues on the Raucous Caucus on Pacifica Radio on Tuesday, they thought it would be Newt Gingrich. They thought he was going to win. I said, no, it's going to be Romney. Well, lo and behold, Rick Santorum last Tuesday won not one, not two, but 3 separate caucuses. And not in little states like Iowa, New Hampshire, or Nevada. Frankly, these states have more electoral votes even than South Carolina. Missouri, Colorado, Minnesota, these are your classic purple states. And Missouri leans a little red, Minnesota leans a little blue, and Colorado, they always vote for the winner, it seems, in the last several elections. These are important states. In fact, given the fact that Florida got dinged half its delegates for jumping ahead of the curve, they have about the same amount of delegates as Florida does in the race. Now, it's true Missouri was a what they call a beauty contest. It doesn't really reflect the delegate count, but it does reflect in Colorado and Minnesota. Was the press wrong? Were we wrong to write off Rick Santorum so soon?
Gives me a little bit of Jason in Friday the 13th. Every time you think he's down and dead, and you relax just a little, you know, there he comes, scaring everybody, roaring back with the chainsaw, ready to wreak more havoc.
You talking about Rick Santorum, or
no? I'm talking about the whole race. I'm talking about the whole race.
Okay,
no, not Rick Santorum. You know, the fact that every time it looks like Governor Romney is everybody making the whole thing upside down. Look, Mitt Romney is still going to be the nominee. It's going to take a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I'm not going to put your timetable in your mouth. You can talk about that. And the only thing at this point that can knock him off his game is if somehow Santorum manages to beat him in Michigan, in which case then it's truly game on. But
Michigan is of course, Mitt Romney's home state. His father was governor of Michigan.
Right.
If Rick Santorum beats him in Michigan, it's a whole new ballgame.
It's game on at that point. But if Romney, as expected, romps in Arizona on February 28th, which both Santorum and Gingrich have indicated they're not going to contest Arizona, and Gingrich has indicated he's not going to contest Michigan. If Romney wins Michigan, then I would say we're still following, although a little bit delayed, the inevitability narrative that will take us to a Romney nomination.
But Mike, Mitt Romney is only winning in his home area or in states with a very large Mormon population. I mean, he only wins in New Hampshire. Okay, well, Florida. All right, well, okay, Florida would be the counterexample. You're absolutely right about that. Or he wins in states where he uses a tremendous amount of money to pound with his super PAC negative spots about the opponents. I think it's fair to say that Mitt Romney didn't win Florida. Newt Gingrich lost Florida. And Newt Gingrich lost Florida. The latest count I saw, there were 200 negative ads run by Mitt Romney's PAC against Newt Gingrich, and only about 10 ads that Newt Gingrich could afford to run against Romney. This is the Wall Street guy. This is the guy that outspends his other candidates. In the caucus states, we now know that Mitt Romney has about $19 million on hand. That's what they said in his recent filing. And on January 31st, Santorum had $300,000 on hand. $19 million, $300,000. But money aside, Santorum won 3 states. It seems to me that, well, the Washington Post headline is right. Romney's triple defeat underscores GOP's lack of enthusiasm about him. Even in Maine, right? Maine, which is very close to Massachusetts, New England. He barely eked out a win over Ron Paul. This is not somebody who has a lot of enthusiasm
Mark,
in your party.
Let's look at the relative effort being put in. In Massachusetts, not Massachusetts, in Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado. Rick Santorum made 28 appearances in those states. Mitt Romney made 2 appearances total, and Newt Gingrich never went to any of those states.
So is Romney just coasting?
So,
is he like,
no.
oh, I'm going to win Colorado, Minnesota.
No.
I don't have to try.
No.
Why is he only going two appearances? Why do you write you can't deny these are 3 important states: Colorado, Minnesota, and Missouri.
President Obama wrote the book on this. This is a delegate hunt. It's not about winning this and winning that. This is a delegate hunt. So when you have 3 states all on the same day, none of which have binding processes to get delegates, you put in less.
Colorado and Minnesota, the primary process begins that you elect people who elect other people.
Right, but there are no binding elections for delegates at those caucuses. You still have the chance to go in there and influence them as they get closer to the actual election of the delegates. In Missouri, of course, it was nothing but a $7 million beauty contest, which nobody can figure out.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you're electing delegates in Colorado and Minnesota, you're electing, if you want Santorum to win, you're electing Santorum delegates. You're electing people who said, I'm voting for Santorum.
Look,
you can have faithless electors, Electoral College.
I'll stipulate to the fact that even in a non-binding contest, you'd rather win than not win. I mean, absolutely, the object is to come in first place.
But Colorado is a western state. It borders Utah. It has, frankly, a decent-sized Mormon population. How could he lose Colorado?
He didn't go there. He didn't campaign. Well, actually, he campaigned once in Colorado.
Let's see here. No, this just shows the win. It doesn't show where he campaigned.
And the same thing with Maine. Ron Paul skipped CPAC. Of all things, the guy who won the CPAC straw poll the last 2 years in a row,
the Conservative
Political Action Conference, skipped CPAC for purposes of staying in Maine and campaigning, and he ran a pretty good campaign. He found 36%, but Mitt Romney, who skipped Maine...
he did not skip Maine. In the last moment, he got so nervous about Ron Paul that the Friday night before he closed down, he had a big rally in Maine's largest city of Portland and barely eked out a 38 to 36 win.
Well, he won Maine, and equally interesting, he won CPAC straw poll, which is, the one... of all the things that have influence, the CPAC straw poll is the granddaddy of them all.
More
important than the Ames, Iowa straw poll.
62%, almost 2/3 of conservatives at CPAC voted against Mitt Romney. It seems to me that
Marco,
people at CPAC are not going to support Ron Paul. He's a libertarian. They're not some. I don't know how many.
No, he won CPAC twice in a row. Right. 11 and 10. He won CPAC.
Isn't it fair to say that if Santorum and Gingrich were not splitting the conservative vote, Mitt Romney would be in second place right now?
Well, in Florida, if you look at what happened, Mitt Romney got more votes than Gingrich and Santorum combined. So I think it depends on the state you're in and things like that.
Mitt Romney has about 10 times as much money as Santorum and Gingrich.
Let's not minimize that organization and money still do count for a lot in politics. And in fact, it's an overwhelming important thing to have with a campaign. Mitt Romney has it. Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich don't.
But let's talk about money, because Mitt Romney is the candidate of money. He's the candidate who famously says he doesn't care about the very poor. He's the famous candidate who's...
No, he said he wasn't concerned about the poor because they have a safety net.
Yeah, he thinks the safety net's working. Tell that to...
No, he said he'd repair it if it was not working.
But he's not very concerned. He doesn't think it's a big problem. It's not a big issue. He actually declared that 90 to 95% of Americans were between the very poor and the very rich. That's ridiculous. That we have at least a quarter of the nation's children living in poverty. The poverty rate affects 1 in 6 Americans. We have 1 in 7 Americans on food stamps.
Mark, come on. If you want to talk about ludicrous, these Occupy wackos think that 99% of the American people are with them. I mean, it's just, you say things that are hyperbole in politics, and it doesn't necessarily have to have an absolute statistical grounding. It's just all a matter of a campaign.
The Occupy movement's not running for president, to be fair. When the president of the United States says that, maybe 5-10% of Americans are very rich or very poor, this is a guy who's out of touch. And let's face it, this is a guy who's seen as out of touch by independents, by Democrats, and to a large part by Republicans. I think a lot of the reason Santorum is winning, it's not just his social conservatism, which he is winning on that message, to be sure. It's also because he's reaching out to what we used to call Reagan Democrats, to blue-collar Republicans, to lower middle-class, working-class Republicans, who see in Mitt Romney, this is the Wall Street guy. This is the guy that doesn't care about the ordinary American. I think he's winning running on those grounds. You disagree?
No, he has his appeal, and if he gets the nomination, he'll make a fine, or if he's elected, he'll make a fine president. I can support Rick Santorum enthusiastically as I can support Newt Gingrich enthusiastically. There's no doubt
you can support Newt Gingrich enthusiastically?
Very enthusiastically. Right. There's no doubt that we have a strong field that's still left competing. But I think that overall we are looking at a scenario where, especially when you get to Super Tuesday, and it's going to take organization and money in 12 states simultaneously, Mitt Romney is the only one that has the campaign put together to compete in 12 states.
Mike, you're a Republican strategist. You're a talking head. I like you. You're my friend. But it is your job.
I'd rather have money in an organization than not have money in an organization.
It's your job to say things like this is a strong field. If you look at poll after poll of ordinary Republicans who don't work in the industry the way you do, they think it's a weak field. Let's face it. The Republicans do not like Romney. They do not like Gingrich. They do not like Santorum. And most of them don't like Ron Paul.
Mark,
your strong candidates are Mitch Daniels and Marco Rubio and a whole bunch of people that never ran.
The only Republicans that think we have a weak field are the martyrs who would rather walk the plank pure than compromise 2% and win. Those are the ones who think we have a weak field. The vast majority of rank-and-file people who go to work, have a job, take care of their families, and vote on Election Day are fine with our field.
I don't think that's true. I'll bring you some polls. Right. I think I can show you that Republicans are not very happy with the field. But let's talk about the perception of Mitt Romney. And then we'll get to Santorum, and because he has his own perception problems. But Mitt Romney is seen, I think, as a very rich man, which he is, $250 million. That's not chump change.
He's been successful. He didn't inherit it. He earned it.
He inherited a lot of it. His father was the head of American Motors. I mean, he hardly grew up poor.
His father was head of American Motors back in the days when the CEO got paid $100,000 a year.
And the governor of Michigan. This is
the governor of Michigan got paid $50,000 a year. He hardly inherited it.
I think it's fair to say Mitt Romney was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. This is the guy who has $250 million, who made a practice of hiring and firing large numbers of people. And I think it's fair to say that that a lot of Americans don't think he understands how they live, how ordinary Americans live. It's interesting. You said that Republicans are pretty much happy with the field. I've got one on the line. He's going to come in after the break. He's been on this show before. You know Matt Robbins. He's, in fact, I think he's, well, he'll tell me his title when he comes in. I think he's the executive director of a conservative, emergence of a new majority, some conservative think tank. I don't think he's very happy with the candidates, but I'm going to let him speak for himself, and then I'll give you a chance to respond. If you want to call in, you can join in as soon as Matt Robbins is done. 888-488-MARK. We'll be right back after this.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change.
Here again, the Inside
Understanding
Scoop
connections
with
between
Mark
people
Levine.
and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created My Wonderful...
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, talking about the Republican nomination battle. It's been topsy-turvy. Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich have been written off time and time again. They keep coming back. I agree with the Washington Post. Romney's triple defeat underscores GOP's lack of enthusiasm about him. Mitt Romney may well win Mike Lane. Mike Lane is my guest, Republican strategist. But he'll win only because Republicans consider him the least of all evils, and only because the conservative vote is split between Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum.
Mark, do I have to go back just 4 short years ago when it was not until the middle or end of June when Barack Obama finally amassed the delegates necessary to beat Hillary Clinton?
Here's the difference. I think, frankly, and I said so as a Democrat, the political views of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were very, very similar. It was very hard to find a light between them. Basically, it was a question of who is best able to present those views. That's what we Democrats disagreed on, would it be Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. Here you've got real strong policy differences, and I think the majority of Republicans are against Mitt Romney, and only because Santorum and Gingrich split that vote that he's winning right now.
Well, I disagree. I think everyone in the race is for smaller government rather than larger government. I think everybody is for individual responsibility rather than collective responsibility. I think everyone is for a stronger national defense rather than a weaker national defense.
Except Ron Paul.
Well, okay, I skipped that.
Okay.
There is a lot of similarity. We're talking about differences around the edges, not core values.
Well, let me hear what Matt Robbins has to say. He can say whatever he wants to. Matt, I gotta really appreciate you calling in from your sick bed. I know you've just gotten over some gallbladder surgery, so I think it's terrific that you were able to call in and give us your 2 cents. Thanks so much for doing that.
I wish I were there with you guys, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Tell me again, what's your title? I mangled it before. Executive Director of New Majority?
No, you got it. I'm Executive Director of American Majority.
American Majority. Okay, it's pretty close, pretty close. So, Matt, I don't know. What are your views? Are you upset with all the major candidates? Do you want a broken convention? You used to be a Rick Perry supporter. Where do you go from here?
I'll repeat it again, Mark. I am a supporter of the conservatives in the primary process.
Who's that?
Mike's right about one thing. This is a contest for the party faithful, and folks on Election Day are going to really have a pretty easy choice between the Republican offer and what President Obama offers with his mangled budget.
Yeah. But who's the conservative choice?
Romney's not sealing the deal.
Okay, I agree with you. Romney's not sealing the deal. Who is the conservative choice? Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Ron Paul, someone else?
Definitely not Newt.
Rick Santorum, then.
Santorum is a big government Republican.
Ron Paul?
And we're left with Mitt.
So, but you don't seem that happy about it.
It's not Ron Paul.
You don't seem that happy about it, Matt.
It's pretty bleak for a true blue conservative. As Mike says, I'll be happy to support the Republican on Election Day, but it's pretty bleak right now for conservatives.
Are you hoping that Santorum, Gingrich, and Romney split the vote enough ways that there's no majority, a broker convention happens, and Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or Chris Christie or Mitch Daniels comes in on their
I'd love
white
to give
horse?
you your fevered dream, Mark, but it's not going to happen.
So you're going to hold your nose and do what? Support whom?
Well, I mean, it's a clear choice between what the Republican Party stands for and what Obamonomics and Obamacare and all these horrible, huge $17 trillion debt things stand for the next 4 years. It's a pretty easy choice on November 2nd.
Well, I'll defend President Obama in a second, but in the intra-Republican race, are you now just staying out of it? Do you think a lot of conservatives will stay home and not vote?
I think a lot of conservatives have been very disappointed with sort of their first choices that have been sidelined. Now they'll sort of sit back and watch the process unfold. I think they're okay with Romney as long as he doesn't screw up anymore.
But you predict then that the amount of people voting will go down, the enthusiasm will go down. I mean, just in the most recent caucuses, frankly, the level of participation was way off from what it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, again, that's the party faithful, Mark. I think when you get to the general election, you're going to see folks come out of the woodwork on this issue of fiscal insanity. There's only one side offering a solution to what's going on in Washington right now.
Well, I'll get on to the fiscal insanity a little bit later on. Because
I actually think it's great that Mark brought it up.
I actually think it's quite sane. But, I mean, Mike, I actually think Matt's very typical of Republican faithful. Yeah, he's going to support anybody over Obama, probably even Ron Paul, but at the same time...
I'd support Ron Paul over Obama.
He's not happy with any of them.
No.
No? Am I misstating how you believe? I don't want to misstate you, Matt. Please.
I mean, Ron Paul is not acceptable.
Okay, all right. So he's not acceptable. You might even vote for Obama over Ron Paul.
You got everything else right.
Okay, all right. But between Santorum, Gingrich, and Romney, he's not happy. He'll hold his nose and vote for them over Obama. But that's hardly likely to get an enthusiastic electorate. I mean, Matt Robbins, he's head of a think tank. He'll do his duty. He'll go out and vote. But there are people throughout the countryside who believe like Matt does, aren't as politically involved as he is. They might just stay home in November 2012.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Matt that, the motivation here, whether we have a candidate that inspires people, whether we have a candidate that motivates people, whether we have a candidate that, gets people, I got to get out of bed and go vote this morning, is not as important in a year when 115% of the Republican Party is motivated to remove the president from office.
Other than the fact that Republicans don't like Democrats.
No, it's not Democrats. I believe it's President Obama's policies that they just absolutely abhor.
I can't really understand that. For example, President Obama believes in stimulating the economy at a time of recession. Republicans believe in cutting an economy. They want the economy to shrink. They want less spending, less government spending. They want, they want greater deficits. I don't understand how. I've seen Mitt Romney's plan, and Mitt Romney's plan is to really shrink taxes on the wealthy and to shrink government spending, to shrink the economy. How does that grow jobs?
Mark, let me share with our viewers just a few numbers, not a lot, from today's budget presentation by the president. He unveiled his budget. Now, hopefully the Senate will pass a budget. It's been 1,021 days since they've passed the budget.
They've appropriated the money. They just haven't allocated it.
The chief of staff, Jack Lew, was on television yesterday totally and completely misstating the case, intentionally, I might add, saying that, it takes 60 votes to get a budget through the Senate.
It does by the Republican rules.
In fact, no, it takes 51 votes. The one thing that is not, you cannot filibuster the budget. So the president's chief of staff intentionally misstated the case. Everybody in Washington knows that that's not a filibusterable thing.
The reconciliation rules are very complicated. Need I remind you, and it's not clear sometimes what you can get in and what you can't.
This is contained. Obama's own Office of Management and Budget supplied these numbers as part of the budget presentation this morning. In 10 years, on the current projection given Obama's presentation, the total debt will be $47 trillion.
By when?
2022.
Okay.
Over the next 10 years, we will add another $25.9 trillion to the existing debt. The debt at the end of this year will be $16.3 trillion. There will be another $10.6 trillion added to the debt over the next 10 years. The current budget proposed $3.8 trillion in outlays and $1.9 trillion in new taxes proposed by Obama over the
You could say trillion many times. I could say trillion too. I could say we spent $1 trillion on the war in Iraq. We spent $4 trillion on the Bush tax cuts. I mean, you could throw trillions around. I could throw trillions around. Let me talk to you about what Americans care about, because they don't care about $1 trillion.
Americans care about cutting spending.
No.
They know we have a spending problem.
You know what I think Americans care about?
Spending.
They care about the economy.
Right. Spending is what's driving the economy into the ground.
Unemployment is going down. We went from 9% to 8.5% to 8.3% in the most recent numbers. The stock market is heading up to record highs, and the economy is getting better.
Right. And
businesses are doing better. They're making record profits. I got to say, if Mitt Romney's running as a turnaround king, Obama's already turning it around from the worst economic recession we've had.
Falling out of the job market.
All right, Matt, go ahead. You give me your perspective. Go ahead. I know there's a delay.
While he's thinking about this.
I'm just throwing in 1 million people have self-selected and taken themselves out of the job market.
That happens all the time. People leave and enter the job market. That's the main thing is that you find the numbers are falling. And you got to remember, this is a recession. This is the Wall Street recession. This is a recession brought to us by Wall Street. It's not because the American workers were bad on the job. This is a recession brought to us exactly by the kind of people like Mitt Romney who throw around jobs around and fire a bunch of people and send jobs overseas. This is exactly the people who play with money and got a bailout from the American taxpayer. These are Mitt Romney's people. They're the ones paying very little taxes, even though they make hundreds of millions of dollars. And he's going to go in and say Wall Street's doing great, even though all Americans know Wall Street caused this recession.
Barack Obama's campaign.
Actually, I'll tell you something, Matt. I looked at Obama's donors versus Mitt Romney's donors. Half of all the money raised by Obama is raised by people who gave him less than $200 each, and half of all the money raised by Mitt Romney is by people who gave him $1 million or more. Who do you want as your president? The guy representing people who gave under $200?
$1 million or more?
Yes, because it went to his super PAC. I'm including his super PAC along with his campaign.
Okay, well, let's
you got to combine them together.
No, you can't.
Of course you can. Who's running all those?
They're separate things.
Who's running all those anti-Gingrich ads? They're all by the super PAC. Super PAC has more money than his campaign. You can ignore it?
It's a felony for the campaign to cooperate and coordinate with the super PAC. It's a felony. This is the kind of thing that, they prosecute people like John Edwards for.
That's not true. This is the kind of thing that's policed by the Federal Election Commission, which you and I both know.
But there's no coordination and cooperation between the super PAC.
So Mitt Romney gets his lawyer and all his people that used to work for him and his best friends. He puts them in the super PAC, and like Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, we won't coordinate.
Well,
who is running all the anti-Gingrich ads in Florida? It's the super PAC. Don't tell me that's not Romney's people.
I'm glad you brought up the super PAC, because after 2 years of declaring that super PACs were the absolute worst thing in the world, they were going to destroy Western civilization as we know it.
I don't know about Western civilization, but just America.
He chewed out the Supreme Court to their face at the State of the Union address.
That's right.
And now he's saying, Yahoo! Super PAC Obama, here we go.
Now he's saying
he's personally ordering each of his cabinet members to appear with the super PAC fundraisers so that they can destroy Western civilization.
That's what your party has brought this country. That's what your party describes this country.
Not my
party.
The
only way to compete in the election is to rely on a few millionaires to give vast amounts of sums, and that's what your party wants. The plutocracy.
So there's no hypocrisy on the president's case here?
You know what? When you have a bit of hypocrisy? If a guy comes at me with a machine gun, I believe machine guns should be illegal, but the only way to fight him back is with another machine gun. I don't like it. I don't like individuals to own machine guns. But if a guy comes at me, that's apparently the only way I need to fight him. That's the only way Obama can compete until we get the public financing we need. Matt, I know you want to respond. I'm going to give you a chance to do so after we come back. Folks, you can call in as well. 888-488-MARCH, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
El Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals,
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos,
are a small part of what we do.
Son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
para ayuda, información, o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia.
Comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
Ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half of it.
Saving for retirement,
The Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Levine. Got two Republicans taking me on today. Sitting to my left is Mike Lane. He's Republican strategist, the president of Intelligence Strategies. On the phone, I've got Matt Robbins. He's the president of the New American Majority. I think it's what it's called. Well, Matt, I think you're going to be in the minority. Let me be clear. I solemnly predict right here, right now, President Obama will win re-election. He'll win by a closer margin than he won in 2008. I'll give you all that. But as the economy improves, as Americans see that they're going back to work, as the stock market rises, as the economy gets better, President Obama will get reelected. I'm quite confident of that. And so I'm also pretty confident that Republicans are not real happy about their choices. I know, Matt, you're a good soldier. You're gonna pull the lever for any Republican except Ron Paul who wins. But I got to say, there are a lot of people, if it's Romney, the social conservatives won't be very happy. If it's Romney, blue-collar people won't be very happy. If it's Rick Santorum, what's left of the moderates, the Republican Party, won't be very happy. And if it's Newt Gingrich, I don't know that anyone in your party is going to be very happy. Matt, you really think you're going to win this election?
I don't think you're taking into account the sea change.
What sea change? I don't see a sea change.
I think there's a whole new electorate now since the Tea Party in 2009. I think you're going to see folks mobilizing with that Occupy Wall Street mentality against big government, against big corporations, against Wall Street, against Obama, who's at the head of all this.
Matt, I think the Tea Party's dying out. I'm sorry. I do not see the fervor I saw in 2010, and I don't see any fervor of the Tea Party for Mitt Romney. Or, frankly, for Rick Santorum either, for that matter.
You don't see it right now in the primaries. You'll see it in general election day. You'll see it when there's a black and white choice between these policies of this crazed White House and administration and some roadmaps to sanity again.
Mike, let me address this to you because I'm going to tell you why I disagree with Matt, and I'll give Matt a chance as well. I think the Tea Party, if anything, has distinguished itself as a bunch of purists. They care more about being right than winning elections. They're not very practical. If you look at, for example, the Delaware election, where they got rid of the guy who would have won the election, Mike Castle, a moderate Republican. My friend Chris Coons got in. Thank you very much. I went to law school with him. I think he's a great senator for Delaware. But if they hadn't voted for Christine O'Donnell over Mike Castle, if they hadn't in Nevada voted for a pretty whacked out Tea Party woman over the standard candidate, I think it's fair to say that you'd have 2 more Senate seats. I think the Tea Party, and God bless them from my side, they're purists. They care only about their agenda. And I don't think Romney, Santorum, or Gingrich, or maybe Ron Paul does, but I don't think Romney, Santorum, or Gingrich really supports most of the Tea Party agenda.
Well, look, I agree with your characterization for the most part that people who are active Tea Party participants tend to be looking for more purity than other folks.
Well, Michelle Bachmann would support this.
As I said,
she's gone.
She didn't win.
Right.
Didn't get enough votes.
Right.
And certainly they're looking for more purity than others. But these things go through cycles. They ebb and they flow. And currently, I think Matt has it exactly right. It might be ebbing now in the primary because there's no one person that they can get behind, and so you see fall off of 5-10% in some primary turnouts because some of these people are not coming out to vote in the primaries. But he has it dead on that when the choice is our nominee versus President Obama, it's not going to ebb, it's going to flow, and you're going to see massive turnout on our side trying to restore fiscal sanity to what's going on in this country.
I don't think so, because I think the Tea Party is almost as much anti-Wall Street as they are anti-government. And if Mitt Romney is your nominee...
But Obama's the Wall Street guy.
No.
Obama's the Wall Street guy.
Mitt Romney is the Wall Street guy. Compared to Mitt Romney...
Obama has raised more money from Wall Street than every other candidate combined.
Not than Mitt Romney.
Yes.
Mitt Romney gets millions of dollars from each of his friends. Let me ask you, Matt. It seems to me, it's interesting to me that you said the one candidate you couldn't vote for is Ron Paul. I know you strongly disagree with Ron Paul on foreign policy. So does Mike, so do I, so do most Republicans. But I would venture to say on domestic issues, no one is more Tea Party-esque than Ron Paul. You disagree? Did we lose you, Matt?
That's right. He's the uber Tea Partier.
He is. I mean, if it weren't for foreign policy, you'd be running the Ron Paul campaign right here in Virginia. Am I right?
And you'll see a lot of Dr. Paul's policies being adopted by Rand Paul in the next 4 or 8 years.
Okay,
but we don't make it this time around.
But here's what I find really interesting. I think Ron Paul is a Tea Party candidate. I know you disagree on foreign policy, but I don't see the Tea Party as a foreign policy movement. I don't see many foreign policy signs in the Tea Party unless they're saying end foreign aid. I just don't think I think the Tea Party is a domestic movement. It's focused on the economy. It's focused on government spending.
Bipartisan consensus, and there has been in America for 50 years.
But it seems to me the Tea Party, would you agree with me that they're mostly domestic issues and that many of them, first of all, if Ron Paul runs as a third-party candidate, they're going to vote for him over the Republican nominee. You agree with me there? Can you hear me? You thinking about that question? I know there may be a little bit of a delay. Let me ask you, Mike, if Ron Paul, and he probably won't, but if Ron Paul were to run as a third-party candidate, I think all those Tea Party activists would vote for Ron Paul instead of the Republican nominee.
I don't, because the Tea Partiers tend to be more mainstream on foreign affairs, and you're right.
I don't see any foreign affairs signs in any Tea Party rallies.
Dr. Paul, no, they are.
That's not what they care about. That's not their big issue.
No, it's not, you're right. It's not their big issue, but it is one of their issues, and it's an issue on which they can't go as far as Dr. Paul goes in terms of his.
Many of them would cut defense. I've heard Tea Partiers talk about
but it's not a matter of cutting defense. I mean, I'd even negotiate with you some reductions in defense spending.
Okay.
What I'm not going to do is unilaterally disarm, which I think is what President Obama wants to do with his new budget. When you start talking,
this is the president that got bin Laden. This is the president that fought in Libya.
You know what? No, the president
he hardly wants to unilaterally disarm.
The president didn't get bin Laden.
Yes, he did.
A Navy SEAL got bin Laden.
He made the courageous decision to order those Navy SEALs to go with imperfect information.
It was the easiest decision there was. Go, do it. Seriously, I mean, there was no decision to make. Look,
they told him he had a 40 to 60% chance of success. I give the guy credit.
I'm concerned about a military that can only fight one war at a time or fight on one front at a time, and that's what the president is proposing.
I'll tell you what the president's done. We're going to move on to foreign policy in the last.
I know, but we're involved in Afghanistan.
We're pulling out of Iraq.
We may be involved in Syria, which we'll talk about in the last segment.
We will.
And then what do you think Kim Jong-un's going to do over in Korea? Do you think he's not going to take advantage of that and roll south over the border?
Many Republicans complained when President Obama left Iraq, which we have.
Well, not really. We still have 16,000.
We've got
military contractors.
We've got mercenaries,
right? We're paying mercenaries to be there instead of the Marine Corps and the Army, which I don't particularly agree with. But
I don't particularly agree with it either. But I'm glad that frankly, if we're going to have people there, at least they're being paid well to be there. I don't think we should have people there. I think Obama was right to bring our troops home. You disagree? Would you have us still in Iraq after all these years?
I think it's very clear that we pulled out too early, and we need to be there because the instability and what's going on now, particularly with the harassment of our remaining people there, including the contractors and the diplomats, is very, very clear that the military needs to be there to maintain the stability.
Here's the problem with the Republican invasion. When the Republicans invade...
No, we're not invading.
They never leave. We did invade under George W. Bush, and now we can't leave. I want to ask Matt the question.
I think we were probably within a couple years of leaving, but we left too early.
Matt, you and
I think the facts on the ground show that we left too early, and we did it for political reasons, which is not good.
You and I don't talk about foreign policy much. I really don't know how you're going to answer this question, but I'm very glad that we left all our troops out of Iraq, although we still have... we certainly have contractors there in very small numbers.
16,000.
Compared to 150,000, it's very small numbers. Matt, what do you think? Do you think we should still be in Iraq?
It's going to be an embassy of Saigon moment. You're going to see the overrun of the Baghdad embassy, I predict, in the next year or two.
So, in your view, we should be. You and Mike agree that we should be in Iraq indefinitely. We should be there, like in Germany and Japan after World War II. We should be there forever.
Not indefinitely, but with a smart, sensible, small force. And I hate to say this, Joe Biden was probably right.
Actually, Joe, Matt and I had this argument on the air.
Mark loves that.
I do love that. I do love that because I'm a big fan of Joe Biden. I've always been a big fan of Joe Biden. What Joe Biden said was that we need a small group. I got Matt Robin to praise Joe. This is going on tape, Matt. We have you praising the vice president. But no, I do think Joe Biden is right. That we need a small force to go around. If we have a terrorist camp, bomb that camp. No one's saying to unilaterally disarm. But a small mobile force on the ground can do a lot better than an occupation of an entire country. Isn't Joe Biden right? You agree with Matt?
If you've got a country that is a harbinger for the terrorist organization, you can't do that with a small force.
That's not Iraq, though. No,
but if Matt was just saying it very well, maybe if in 2 years the Baghdad embassy looks like the evacuation of Saigon back in 1775, which I think he's darn close to being prescient on that. Then it will be the nation that harbors terrorism.
Republicans always talk about too much government spending. The Baghdad embassy, to me, is the classic example of too much government spending. We took one of Saddam Hussein's old palaces, built a huge green zone around it, and built, frankly, a palace that's probably more expensive than what Saddam Hussein built in the first place for our embassy in Iraq, and now, of course, we're leaving the country. I think we've wasted a lot of money on Iraq. You talk about $1 trillion, Mike? That $1 trillion we're never going to get back. We're never going to get back the thousands of lives we lost there, the tens of thousands of wounded, the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives that were lost there. And for what? I mean, Matt, if we're going to have a Saigon moment, then it sounds to me like these past 10 years are wasted, or we got to spend another $1 trillion or $2. I mean, what's our choice?
God knows, Mark. I mean, the policy aims have been muddied ever since about 2005. But once the decision was made to go in, you got to stick with it. You can't make our sacrifices of our military men and women in vain. And you've got to keep a small force. That's what I was talking about with Biden. You've got to keep a small force there to protect our embassy.
Well, I'm actually okay with a small force. Actually, I think the 16,000 mercenaries constitutes the small force that we agree on. So I don't see any problem.
That's not military.
With the current. Well, Halliburton's pretty military. Blackwater, whatever they're called today, they're pretty military. They got guns. They got armored tanks.
Not the same as the 101st Airborne.
That's true. That's true. I don't mind a very small force there, frankly. But at the end of the day, we're spending trillions of dollars on rebuilding a country when our country at home needs some rebuilding. Matt, I really want to thank you for calling in and for adding this debate. You can hang up now, or if you want. Our last quarter hour is going to be on Syria. Well, I don't really know your view. I suspect I may have a more interventionist view than you do. I'm not sure. You're welcome to stay for that if you want, or you can hang up and I'll just deal with Mike on that. If someone else wants to call in, the toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, and we'll be right back. Oh, we do have another caller. Okay, so I guess I'll say goodbye to Matt, and we'll go to our next caller when you come back. Thank you, Matt, for calling in, and check out my website, marklevinetalk.com. We'll be right back after this.
Is that Mrs. Robin?
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. I want to thank Matt Robin for calling in. Apparently, Mike Lane, of course, is my guest. He's Republican strategist. We have another caller on the line who's Chris Robin, who I'm told, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is no relation to Matt Robin. Either way, we're very glad to have you, although I understand you're not very happy with either me or Mike or the show. What are your 2 cents? Are you there, Chris?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, I hear you now. All right. So you're no relationship to Matt, right?
Great. Yeah. All right. I came in the middle of a conversation, and I'm very sorry.
Okay.
And I need your distinguished guest to be quiet right now. Mark, I've seen you several times when I've taken classes in C Studio and stuff, and we pass by and say hi and so forth. So I know you.
Okay.
And I've watched your show on several occasions, and it's great. I want to take everybody back to January of 2001, when the reins were handed over from Uncle Bill to Wild W.
Okay.
Okay? We had no national debt. We had $44 billion in reserves.
Yeah, we had some debt, but we had a massive surplus. Yeah.
Unemployment was at 0.4%.
Yeah, very low.
Okay? I paid $78. I paid 78 cents for a gallon of gas down at the Sheets in Woodbridge.
78 in
I've
2001?
still got the receipt.
It seems cheaper than I remember.
But Sheets is discount.
Oh, okay. 78 cents. I remember it being $1 something, but go ahead. That's close enough.
So people can't sit there and say that everything as far as the Obama administration has been wrong. The Bush administration, the W administration, I stand corrected because I have a lot of respect for George Sr. The W administration developed the term obstructionists, and ever since President Obama took office, that's all most of the members of the Republican Party have been, is obstructionists. They have stood in his way continually as he's tried to improve the situation for this country. But they haven't let him because they haven't let their cooperation.
Well, hang on, Chris. Now, I agree with a lot of what you have to say. I will give Mike a chance to respond because I think we owe him that. But I agree with a lot of what he has to say, Mike. We had a massive surplus. We had some debt, but we had a massive surplus. We had very low unemployment at the end of Bill Clinton. We had much lower gas prices. And it's fair to say that after George Bush put us in a tailspin, we're losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a year, a month. What happens? Barack Obama comes in. He tries to get some help on a stimulus package. Virtually no help. He has to cut it, in fact, to appeal to a couple Republicans, and Republicans filibuster everything that requires 60 votes. Let's face it, Barack Obama could have done a lot more if your party had been less obstructionist.
Thank God. Look, let me address a few of the things that Chris had to say.
He's clearly no relation to Matt Robbins.
Right.
Definitely his views are different.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that 100% of anybody's administration was perfect, and I'm not going to defend 100% of what George Bush did. But we have to look at, what made the budget get out of whack. It was two things. First, it was the recession caused by 9/11.
That's silly.
Oh,
that's
Mark,
silly. The Bush tax cuts.
It was the recession caused by 9/11.
Which lasted, 6 months?
It was the recession caused by 9/11. Followed by massive increases in spending. And I've been critical forever of the Bush spending increases, and I'm still critical of the Bush spending increases.
Mike.
But those were the two things that...
You complain about Obama's deficit. And you know that the Bush recession...
Obama's deficit is so much more than Bush's.
You know that the Bush recession of 07-08 was far more severe than the 6 months or so we lost in 2001. Look, that very deep recession causes greater deficits. You also know that the Bush tax cuts cost the budget far more than any amount of Bush spending.
look, the Bush spending,
which went up,
and it went up dramatically, and it should.
The Iraq War was
have.
$1 trillion of it.
Over 8 years, President Bush added approximately $4 trillion to the national debt. Over 3 years, President Obama has added more than President Bush in 8 years added to the national debt.
The money
and we're headed for $47 trillion in national debt, according to President Obama's numbers this morning.
Here's where Chris
we can't afford this kind of spending.
Here's where Chris is
It ruins
right.
the economy.
All you have to do is look at the money that was added under Obama. Almost all of it was because of Bush. Only about $1 trillion or so was because of the stimulus package. Everything else was because of the Bush tax cuts, which Obama was forced to extend by the Republicans, the Bush wars, which Obama had to pay for and put on budget when he did not, the Bush Medicaid Part D program that Obama continued. All Obama did was continue Bush's practices because he had obstructionist Congress that didn't let him change it. Less than $1 trillion of it was caused by Obama, and most of that was a massive stimulus package that, let's face it, is finally getting our economy on the right track.
What about $1 trillion in new foreign aid spending to support the Arab Spring that the president proposed this morning?
It's not a trillion.
800 million. Close.
What about the billions of dollars that George W. Bush approved for Wall Street?
There's a huge difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion. And the other thing that Chris points out, obviously, is the huge amount of money that we've used to bail out the banks that started under Bush. Again, if you want to complain about Obama,
I absolutely complain about that. But
we're not bailing out, and Bush made a mistake, and we're not bailing out banks anymore. Well, actually, we are bailing out banks.
We still are.
Why don't we just stop it right now? Can we make an agreement that on February 13th,
let me tell you something.
February 13th, 2012, we're going to stop bailing out businesses.
Hold it, gentlemen, please. In January of 2009,
go ahead.
When President Obama took the reins from W handed him a mop and said, "Clean this up."
That's very funny, Chris, but not quite true.
That is the truth.
That's not quite true.
That is very true, my friend.
It is true. I want to thank you for your call. I would let you go on longer. We only have about 6 minutes left in the show, and I do want to address the situation in Syria. But thank you for calling in, Chris. I encourage you to call in. Anytime I'm on the air, I want to hear from you. So thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Mark. Guess what? I'm taking the radio class right now, and I'm going to have you on as a guest as soon as I finish the class.
I would be pleased and honored. Look, I think
I won't look in the mail for my invitation, Chris.
Chris represents the anger that my side of the aisle feels because here Obama got the mop from George Bush, was told to clean up the mess, and then the Republicans in the Senate filibustered everything so he could do very little, and now they're saying he hasn't done enough. Here's what Chris points out that your party never talks about. The vast majority of the increase in the debt under Barack Obama was because of policies by George W. Bush, because of the Bush recession, the Bush tax cuts, and the Bush wars. The only thing that Obama did to increase the deficit of any magnitude was the stimulus package, which, thank God, has brought us out of this recession.
Look, things were not good when President Obama was sworn into office. We all know that. No, it's a matter of record. But what did he do? The first thing he did was he took the mop and he pulled all the strings out of it and he threw them away. Then he took the bucket and he kicked it over and spilled the dirty water all over the place. And his policies on economics have made things worse from start to finish. His deficit spending, his absolute class warfare attacks against people who create jobs. Mark, we would be recovered from this recession if it wasn't for this president's policies. People would have jobs if it wasn't for this president's policies.
Move on to Syria.
We would be moving forward if it wasn't for this president's policies.
I want to move on to Syria. Before we do, I got to show you a chart. Let's go to the computer if we can. This is the jobs under Obama and the jobs under Bush. Can we show the chart on the screen here? It shows that Bush, into his last year, lost more and more and more and more jobs. This year right here is January of 2009 when Obama became president. Mm-hmm. It took about 3 months for the stimulus package to pass Congress, and then boom, we lose less jobs. And the last 19 months, it's all been creating jobs. And this graph, by the way, ends in July 11. It's before the better numbers that occurred after July. This chart says it all. Don't blame Obama for the current recession.
And let's talk about what the president's chief of staff said yesterday morning on television. When asked how much better is it going to get by Election Day, he said, well, actually, it's not. It's going to get worse by Election Day.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. That's what Jack Lew said.
He said, don't force me in predicting a number because that's a really bad... 3.5 minutes left. I'm I'm curious to know where because I don't even know where you stand on this. I'm very upset by what's going on in Syria. You know that, and then I think this is something that transcends partisan lines. I think you'll find Republicans and Democrats who are more interventionist and some who are more isolationist. So I'm not actually sure where you fall on this. But when I see a leader of a country going out and massacring its citizens, as is happening in Homs, I, as you know, supported the intervention in Libya. I think we did it exactly the right way. I did not support the intervention in Iraq. The people were not seeking to overthrow their leader at the time. Maybe they were back in George H.W. Bush's day. They certainly were in George W. Bush's day. We had to invade Iraq, and as we talked about, our troops, some argue, should still be there. What happened in Libya is better. We helped in the air, but the people took their own revolution. I'd like to see that happen in Syria. I'd like to see us help the Syrian people succeed. If we're doing it covertly, I hope we are. Yeah, I know we're doing it through sanctions. I actually call on President Obama to do more to help the Syrian people take the government back. We tried the United Nations. I was worth a try. We tried to push Russia and China hard. They went ahead and vetoed it. Whether it's NATO or the Arab League or someone else, I'd like to see us take a stronger stand and overturn this vicious dictator.
Mark, what's different between Libya and Syria?
Not much.
Right. And so why is the president treating them differently?
There's one tiny difference. There's one tiny difference. The Syrian national forces haven't taken a part of their country yet. I think they will. In Libya, Benghazi was declared free, a very large city, the second largest city in Libya. If Syria gets that far, and I think they really can in the next month or two, I hope we do exactly what we did in Libya.
Look, we have the ability, anytime we want, to declare a no-fly zone in areas that will protect the protesters. We have the ability to provide safe routes for convoys that will resupply the protesters and things like that. We can do a lot of things.
You actually put troops on the ground because that would go further than
we have. We can patrol that from the air. We don't need to put troops on the ground to make that happen.
So we agree basically. We need to do more in Syria.
The president is $200 late and 200 days short on this whole thing. I mixed that metaphor intentionally just to get attention. What his policy in the Middle East is so inconsistent. From Bahrain to Tunisia to Libya to Egypt to Syria, where is the consistency in his policy? There is none. He sends so many mixed signals to everybody. I don't get what he's doing.
I think what he's doing is some of the realist school that frankly you support, where you support an ally even if he's a dictator. You and I had disagreement on Egypt. You were supporting. In my view, I'm consistent, whether it's a Democratic or Republican, I'm always with the people. If the people are overthrowing a dictator, I support it, whether it's one we support in the case of Mubarak or one we oppose in the case of Assad. Frankly, Assad should be an easier choice because he's anti-American and he's anti his own people. So you and I agree we need to do more in Syria.
As we do, but as we've discussed, Egypt's turned into quite a mess. And it's turned into a mess because we blew it. We didn't get in there and fill the vacuum afterwards. We have no foreign policy that's effective in that area. No, I'm talking about massive influence with the people.
We only got a few seconds left. I don't have time to go into it.
Egypt is a mess, Mark. There's no defending what has happened to Egypt. It's a mess.
It's a mess, but I think it still has some chance.
It has no chance.
We'll argue that another day.
Our Secretary of Transportation's son is under house arrest.
Our time is up, and that's bad. Facebook me, Mark Levine. Will be back next week. Hope you enjoyed the insights.